But you won't let those robots see me. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots defeat me. Those evil nature robots, they're programmed to destroy us. She's gotta be strong to fight them. So she's taking lots of vitamins. Cause she knows that it'd be tragic if those evil robots win. I know she can beat them. Oh yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots defeat me. Yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots see me. Yeah, she may. Cause she knows that it'd be tragic if those evil robots win. Yeah. I know she can beat them. Oh yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots defeat me. Yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots defeat me. Yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots see me. Yeah, she may. They don't believe me. But you won't let those robots see me. Yeah, she may.
Uncommon Radio, 88.9 WERS.
88.9, 88 miles per hour. We're going to start chapter 14 now, Foreseen Beyond Time. Finished chapter 13 just now. Chapter 14 is entitled Guided Revelance. Excuse me, sorry. Guidance Revealed. Guidance Revealed. Revealed. Spiritual, spiral ritual. That song we just heard, by the way, was Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots by the Flaming Lips. A song I've loved for over 2 decades now. Oh my, almost 2 decades. Time is flying. Hey, you know why we say time flies? Have you ever heard this? There's a reason, an esoteric reason, an inner esoteric as opposed to the outer exoteric. The inner esoteric reason is because time is personified as Saturn or Kronos, where we get chronology, the titan of time. And Saturn, what does he do? He flies through the sky in a chariot, same as all the sun gods, son of gods, sons of God, because the sun flies through the sky. Time. The sun is the time maker. Horus, Horus, Hours, anagrams. For a reason, a ray sun. And I wanted to say this one real quick before I start reading chapter 14, Guidance Revealed. which opens with a quote from Krishnamurti, who said it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Sometimes, I want to say this, sometimes you gotta be negative. Sometimes you gotta negate. You gotta say no, like Neo does in The Matrix right before he sees that everything is streaming data, including the agents, and he's able to defeat them. He's able to jump into the Smith and blow them up from within. That huge climax of the first Matrix, of the trilogy, starring Trinity, the Matrix, TRI, electricity because you have the plug, male, yang, the outlet, female, yin, you put them together, you put the plug in the outlet, you put the 1 in the 0, and you get life or light, electricity, the electric effect. It's all esoteric. L is the Phoenician phonetic for God, which is why electricity begins with L. Sometimes you gotta be negative. Sometimes you gotta say no. Like to this society of ignorance, of ignoramuses. You gotta say no if you want to wake up. And say yes to truth. You gotta say no to lies. People who say have a positive attitude all the time. Always be positive. Always look on the bright side of life. They're full of shit. Sometimes you gotta take the rose-colored glasses off. Well, always, don't be wearing rose-colored glasses. See things for what they are, If you have a shithead in front of you, say no. Just say no. So here's the Krishnamurti quote at the beginning of Guidance Revealed, Foreseen Beyond Time by Saint Clair. Having lived on earth for millennia, why are we as we are? Asks Krishnamurti. What is the future of all of us? During that evolution of experience, knowledge in actual fact, what has happened to each of us? What shall we do if we see the fact that we are the entire humanity? What am I to do living in this corrupt society? Whatever I do affect society? Am I different from society? Is there an action without motive, self-interest, or seeking gain that is not dependent on the past or a pattern of the future? Jiddu Krishnamurti. The blue Atlantic Ocean crashed onto the sandy shore outside the austere home of the master astrologer. In the distance, an opaque haze shimmered above the Bimini Islands, giving an almost supranatural, mirage-like presence to the Bermuda Triangle. The Master of the Light walked silently into the room overlooking the endless sea. The astrologer looked up from his work. He turned to look around the room, sensing an invisible presence, observing his efforts to put his calculated visions into words. The small white cat with the black tail suddenly jumped onto the table, looking for attention. She looked at the Master of the Light as he watched his own incarnation at work. The astrologer returned his eyes to the computer. He was close to completing the last stages of his Atlantean oracle as the moon moved into the 13th degree of Scorpio. Pluto opposed the sun, shining brightly over the ocean in the 9th Pisces degree. Jupiter opposed Mars. The 4 planets formed a square across the heavens, a perfect cross in the 4 mutable signs, with Mars in line of fixed star Aldebaran, known to the ancients as the Star of the Seers, in Arachne, the 13th sign. The master astrologer gazed at his star science. In the Middle Ages, the world was understood according to a metaphor based on Dante's allegorical Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, of 9 concentric spheres that included 7 planets and the fixed stars. Life on Earth was seen as mirroring arrangements believed to exist in the heavens where everything had its fixed place. Tomorrow was as solid and predictable as the knowledge of yesterday. Today was just one more link in the chain of cause and effect in a divine scheme of things, with man on planet Earth sitting safely in the center of creation. Things remained safe for another few centuries. Cosmos was a gigantic galactic clock wound by the Creator. We found the ultimate analogy known as the clock of destiny. Cosmos was set in motion and was completely understandable through the eyes of the great mathematician, a perfectly mechanical world, or so it seemed for a while. Egyptian Hermetic science seemed to confirm this. Quantum physics told us what the world is not, but as we swept away those layers, what eventually was left became more and more bizarre, until we realized we also had discarded the reason and logic that was the foundation of our former worldviews. What remained before our eyes was no more comprehensible via logic than the readings of the runes and chicken entrails we had so happily abandoned in a search for scientific truth. We returned to high magic and the power of the human mind. How solid Newton's clock seemed, with its eternal ticking in which time and objects in space had a definite past and an assured future. The behavior of cosmos seemed to obey solid laws of matter. However, the clock metaphor had broken its spring, and the assurance it once provided evaporated with Heisenberg's famous uncertainty principle, which denies us the concrete knowledge of a particle's position and momentum. In our infinite cleverness, we had assumed that a particle's attributes were definite set values, and that the process of measurement disturbed the particles to the point that the measured attributes were changed by our measuring. This disturbance model of measurement was briefly thought to account for all the quirky results physicists were producing, such as quantum randomness and Heisenberg's uncertainty relations. Since particles are the building blocks of everything in cosmos, particles, parts of the whole, hologram, there is a necessary link between the behavior of these minuscule units and the objects composed of them, including our minds and ourselves. In a curious twist of the inexplicable link between all things, experimenters searching within the brain structure for a physical foundation for the concepts of the thinking mind and for the 13th consciousness discovered that the brain contains structures called microtubules. These substances contain an electron held in the same indeterminate state as the particles that make up everything else in the cosmos. Furthermore, the position of this electron in the microtubule cavity determines the protein composition of the molecule and the function of the microtubule. Here is the curious fact. If the electron is paralyzed within the microtubule when a gaseous anesthetic is used on a human being, that person loses consciousness. From this bit of data, experimenters extrapolated that the theory that it is the moving electron in the microtubule that gives rise to the absolute or 13th consciousness and to the thinking mind. At this point, we enter unknown territory. If the conscious mind indeed is the result of a quantum process or the indeterminate electron in the microtubule, and our whole perception of reality is a function of the mind, then that perception is ultimately grounded in the quantum process with its quirky behavior. How does this information affect our experience of events around us? When considering the past, for example, could it be that what we perceive as the present is brought about by an active mind functioning through a quantum process, creating experience by collapsing the many possible options before us into one determinate event? In that case, what comprises the future? Could our ideas of the future merely be our intimation of the possible states of experience held in their potential form within our minds? Could it actually be, as we are told, that if we visualize success with some endeavor, we actually create the reality we so desire? Om Shanti. Until next time.